Hi everyone, this is Renee from Meadowlark Mystic and I'm doing video number 2 in the hashtag gardenarcana series. Today we're going to be going over, I'm not exactly sure how many, but maybe, I think we might get through it actually, through the majors. So the cards I have here are the Hanged Man, Death, and Temperance. I wanted to hold the cards up closer. When I was looking at the video replay of the one I did, I should have held the cards up so you could see them a little bit better. It's a very interesting way of depicting the cards. It's archetypal but also theatrical, and I really like that about it. It has some very interesting things going on, but it also seems like it's on a stage and has a backdrop. So that's the Hanged Man. And then Death is super interesting because there are heads on these plants. Death is all red, and the scythe is kind of picking up these bodies that almost seem encapsulated in spider webs or some kind of cocoon. Very weird and interesting. And then the beautiful Temperance, you've got the golden wings with the red diamonds. And the body of Temperance looks almost like ice or a wave. And if you can see their face, they've got this kind of amazing hair and crown. Okay, so back to the herbs that I associate with these cards. For the Hanged Man, I chose California poppy, which is this here. I will put the, it's got a pretty complicated Latin name. So I chose California poppy for the Hanged Man because it is, well, first of all, it just kind of looks like a poppy to me, hanging upside down, and then the orange color. California poppies are a wildflower in California, but they're also a very good sedative. They calm the nervous system without making you feel like you're going to be knocked out. The whole plant is used when you make medicine with California poppy, and I find that you only need the teeniest bit. It's not a flower essence because it has very strong constituents in it, but it is, you only need the littlest bit. And again, I'm not giving any medical advice. But California poppy is amazing. They're easy to grow. They like to grow in kind of gravel, sand. They don't particularly like fertile soil. So you could, even if you live in a place, well, I don't know about the tropics, but even if you live in a place that has a short growing season, you could probably grow them. Yeah, so for the Hanged Man, you're in a moment of reflection. You're in a moment of kind of stasis where you need to just stop and think and reflect and maybe not even think that much, almost like a meditative state where you just have to engage with the spaces between thoughts rather than the thoughts themselves. And California poppy would definitely help with that. So for Death, what did I put for Death? Oh, so for Death, I have Echinacea. Echinacea is it's a fairly well-known and popular mainstream herb. And I will show you a picture of it in case you don't know. So here's a picture of Echinacea. You see Echinacea often in commerce, in nurseries, when the flowers are different colors, but this flower with the kind of pale pink, not pale, but pale purple or pink, and then the orangey, I guess, center, that's the medicinal. The plants that you see that are different colors, those aren't quite as medicinal. So with Echinacea, you've got a plant that helps deep fevers and infections in the body, and it kind of digs those out and kind of finds what needs to be removed from a situation, and that's very kind of death-like with the scythe. But it's not caustic in any way, so it digs things out, but it leaves so much space for new healthy tissue to, you know, to come in for the body to regenerate itself. It's a very powerful herb. The roots are usually used, which also I think is kind of speaks more to death than the roots of a plant are used, like the deep stuff that's going on underneath the surface. So that's why I chose Echinacea for death, because once you get out and you clear out what no longer is useful, often that's when you have a new sprouting of life. The next card in the series today is Temperance. And for Temperance, I kind of went back and forth a little bit about it, but I decided on Yarrow. And Yarrow, you'll probably, if it doesn't come to mind when I say it, you'll probably recognize it when I show it. So this is Yarrow, and the white Yarrow is the most, I think, powerful. You'll see these different ones in commerce sometimes, but those are not as medicinal, although I guess if it's a wild variety of this, it might be, but usually it's the white. So the reason I chose Yarrow for Temperance is that Yarrow, it's not an adaptogen in the way that I explained it in the last video, but it is known as a master of the blood, which means that it responds to problems with the blood in two ways. So it can either release blood that's stuck, such as in, menses when you need to bleed but you're not, or it can stop the flow of blood when you're bleeding too much, as in a wound. So stop bleeding, but also encourage it to flow. So that's why I liked it for Temperance, because in Temperance, you've got kind of this magical action of bringing two different forces together and kind of mingling them into a new substance. And Yarrow is able to do that in the body because of its magical constituents. I also feel like this kind of just, I don't know, the way that this card looks kind of reminds me of the Yarrow. You do see it yellow, like I said. California poppy and Echinacea, purpurea, and then Yarrow. The next set, we've got the Devil, the Tower, and the Star. Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna get to everyone today. Okay, so here's the Devil. And there's a lot of kind of weird, interesting things going on in this card. Okay, so I guess I'll move these over here and we'll just look at this one. So for the Devil, I decided on poke. Poke is a plant native to North America. And I would say most herbalists kind of stay away from it because it can make you sick. So here are the berries, and then that's, the poke plant. It's a wayside weed. So what I mean by that is you'll find it in irrigation ditches. It grows out of abandoned lots in cities. Trash heaps and dumps and stuff. So poke is a weed. It's also very powerful medicine. People in the southern part of the United States, and I guess here, because I heard my dad reference it, they call it po salad. So they take the spring greens and they will cook them in 3 separate changes of water and then eat them as like a spring tonic. So you should, when I say they cook it in 3 changes of water, that should ring alarm bells for you, because that means that there are irritating or poisonous constituents in the herb. So don't go eating it. And the berries are really particularly what I want to talk about. The berries just look poisonous. They're this almost jet black purple. And I don't know if you can see them, but the stem has this tiny little magenta flower. I use the berries to make an ink that I then use for like magical spells and stuff. So I write with the poke ink on leaves or things that are biodegradable. And then I'll bury them or like just release them or whatever. I find it very powerful. So what I like about poke being associated with the devil is that for me, the devil is about being constrained and trapped by someone else's beliefs or someone else's power in a relationship dynamic. And this can be systemic as well as deeply personal. And often with the devil, you are complicit in it in some way. Like you're agreeing or deep down you believe that. That's when it's on a very personal level. When it's systemic, it often is a narrative or bigotry or racism that runs through something. And so it's difficult to kind of root it out. And the chemicals in poke and the way that it works, if you were to use it medicinally, which you would need to be a very seasoned herbalist to do that. So this is a dangerous herb. It is really good for lymphatic stagnation. So the lymph is kind of the corollary system to the circulatory system, but the lymph's job is to push out toxins. And you can feel lymphs on the side of your neck and in your armpits and your groin. And often when you're sick, they'll get swollen. That's why the doctor touches on the sides of your neck for your lymph and also looks at your tonsils. So this is the way that toxins are cleared out. And when they're not cleared out, they can be very problematic. And so I see this very much in the devil card. When things are not faced, when they're not cleared out, they get worse. You feel trapped and desperate. So that's why I chose poke for the devil. The next one is the Tower, everyone's favorite. The Tower. I think this card's a little funny because like their limbs and their legs are flying all over the place, but they're literally not even that far from the ground. It's kind of like the person who's drowning, but all they have to do is stand up. Anyway, so for the Tower, I chose Pulsatilla. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, but often I've just read about these and used them, but not like talk to people about them. It's also called pasque flower. There you go. Again, I'll put the Latin name on the bottom. So Pulsatilla or Pulsatilla, probably Tia because double. Okay, anyway. It's an amazing herb for shock, for when something terrible has happened and your nervous system is really struggling to adapt and to comprehend what has happened. It's another herb where if you have it in tincture form, you only need a few drops. You know, you don't want to take like a dropper full of it because that's too much. Sometimes herbs have the chemical constituents in herbs are such that if you take a little bit, you get one kind of effect, and if you take a lot of it, you get almost the opposite effect. So an example of that would be like valerian. Valerian is an herb that's known for its sedative properties. People use it to go to sleep, but for some people, if you take too much valerian, you're going to be really wired and have like intensely uncomfortable physical sensations. So all that to say, with Pulsatilla, you really only need a few drops, and this is to pull your nervous system back from kind of just teetering off the edge and falling into or spiraling into intensely uncomfortable feelings of grief and despair and all that. So that's why I chose that for the tower. And then the next herb, all of these herbs I have used personally. So I'm not I'm not advocating that you use them at all, and I'm not giving you any kind of advice on how to use them. I'm sharing my experiences with them and how intellectually I'm tying them to tarot majors. Okay, so the star, the beautiful star. I like how these two birds are kind of up close. Also, what's interesting about this star, she has no vessels. The waters are coming out of her hands. And in almost all star cards, the star is naked. But in this deck, almost all the figures are naked. And like with the Hierophant, those figures were naked. Like the lovers, they don't have a lot of clothes on. Well, one of them does, but the other one doesn't. So it's interesting that where is that card? The artist made the decision to, like, she's fully clothed. I mean, you can see, I guess you could see her knees. So anyway, that's interesting. So the herb that I chose, what am I doing? The herb that I chose for the star is 2. It's kind of a cheat. I really love silk mimosa for grief and for finding kind of the happiness. This is the plant flower. I love silk mimosa so much. I had several silk mimosa trees on my farm, and I used the flowers for medicine. The flowers smell so beautiful, and what's interesting about them is that when you try to get your nose close to the flower, it will tickle the inside of your nose and you'll start laughing. That's kind of the feeling of silk mimosas. People consider them a nuisance, a weedy tree, invasive, especially in the southern parts of the United States. I wish I could grow silk mimosa here in Ohio, but it just can't survive the cold winters. I actually have thought about growing it in a pot and bringing it inside. That's how much I love this plant. I also, for the star, felt, so some of you may know, I used to have a pretty large pond in my backyard in Portland, and I had water lilies in that pond. And I just find water lilies so star-like in their attributes. And I'm not talking about in terms of herbal medicine. I'm just talking about so the water lily grows out of the mud. That's why it's such an emblem in Buddhism. So it grows out of the mud, and the yuck and the gunk at the bottom of the pond, because they have to be pretty deep. You can't just put them in a shallow little dish. Anyway, so the muck and the mud, and then they come out and they're this beautiful shining star-like flower. And that's, to me, very emblematic of the star card. Coming out of the water and coming out of the tower and the devil and finding the beauty and finding hope and finding healing. So silk mimosa and water lily for the star. Okay, moving on. So we've got the moon, the sun. I guess I'll just do 4. I don't hear you guys complaining. Judgment and the world. Okay, so the moon. Here's the moon card. Really interesting. You've got this wall tower. You've got these heads. Giant moon with triangles. Then you've got 2 figures. One has a snake coiling around it. they both have the head of what feels to me like Anubis, and this figure has his hands behind his back. Oh, this figure does too. So the snake is really interesting in this card. Okay, so for the moon, I chose mugwort. Mugwort has a long history of magical uses as well as herbal uses. Back a long time ago, magical uses and medicinal uses used to go together. It was not separate. This is mugwort. You've probably seen it just growing on the side of the road. And I'm so excited because I actually, I have mugwort growing in my backyard just as a wild plant. So mugwort is, what I was saying, magical uses, astrology, and medicinal uses used to all be mixed together. It was not separated. So when you read Culpeper or you read ancient herbal texts, they will talk about, the moon rules this herb and, Saturn, and they'll just talk about it as like, and it grows in sandy soil and it helps with bile. So it's interesting in our world that those are very separate. A scientist would make fun of somebody who talks about the astrological correspondence of plants if they're like a botanist or studying the chemicals. I think that they are connected. I think they all do go together. I do think the ancients had some knowledge, actually a lot of knowledge that we've just disregarded. That's not to say we don't have knowledge, but anyway. So mugwort. Mugwort is a very good herb for women for regulating menses. It will make you bleed more. I wouldn't say it's as responsive. So some herbs just work one way. They don't adapt, as some of the herbs that I've shared. I don't have a lot of experience with mugwort for menses regulation. I do have a lot of experience with mugwort for digestive purposes as a helpful additive to after you've eaten a meal that's really heavy or fatty. Taking mugwort helps your gallbladder release bile into the stomach to digest fats. So personally, I have had experience with that, and also with muscle. So mugwort infused in an oil has helped with muscle tension. The reason I chose mugwort for the moon is that it has historically been used as a dream aid, as an herb to help you get in touch with your dream world. So, for example, the oil that I just referenced, you could put that on your third eye, mugwort infused oil, and go to sleep. And then ask, before you go to sleep, ask pertinent questions, or ask questions that you really want the answers to. I think it's an intense experience, so you'd want to be kind of cautious if you did that. But it is about getting in touch with the unconscious, the subconscious, the dream world, and your power. So that's why I chose mugwort for the moon. The next card is the sun. The little people holding hands. So we've got little birds back here, large rocks. And these are those like tears, which sometimes you see on the moon. I like the face of the sun, and I'm glad you can't see these two little kids or little people, because I don't really want to see their face. Okay, so for the sun card, I have St. John's wort, which was kind of a no-brainer for me. St. John's wort is known for, if you've ever seen St. John's wort, it just makes you feel happy seeing it. And it looks like a tiny little sun star. the way that the flowers are. Let me see if I can show you. Oh, here, yeah. So there's St. John's wort. It got notoriety, but in a good way, for its ability to help with depression, specifically seasonal affective disorder. I can see why you might think that. And I think there are strong chemical constituents in it that do indeed interact with serotonin and dopamine receptors. That's why if you are taking antidepressant medication, you should not dabble with herbs in general, but specifically St. John's wort. So anyway, back to St. John's wort. It is a beautiful herb to collect the flowers and infuse them in oil. And the oil, as long as it's not dark green, you know, if you use kind of safflower oil, organic oil, obviously, it will turn a ruby red color like this. So those yellow flowers I showed you and the buds will infuse the oil with this beautiful ruby color. This oil is specific for nerve pain. If you have shingles or for some reason you've got something going on, chilblains in your fingers, it's a beautiful oil for that. It also smells amazing. And you can make a wine with the flowers, which I've never tasted it, but I have tasted the oil and the tincture that I've made with St. John's wort, and it tastes so yummy. And I don't like alcohol, like I don't really like wine. So that tells you something. This herb is just an herb that gives you energy and vigor and hope and soothes you when you've just gone through, you know, the devil, the tower. Even the moon sometimes can be rough. And the flowers look like the sun. So that's why I chose St. John's wort. Okay, the next one is Judgment. So we've got the angel coming down with the hands facing out, which is interesting. And no, you know, trumpet. And I like this. It's kind of interesting how this person and this person are both looking back down at this water. So it kind of feels like water in this deck symbolizes the material world or physicality. I mean, obviously it is emotions, but I don't know, it's interesting. Okay, so Judgment. Judgment, Judgment, Judgment. What did I choose for Judgment? Oh, milk thistle. So remember when I was talking about the emperor as thistles? Specifically for Judgment, I chose milk thistle. Oops. Because I don't know, it's just amazing. So here's milk thistle. It's got a very big flower that is kind of a magenta purpley color. And then the leaves, oops. The leaves have these kind of, the reason it's called milk thistle is the leaves have these like milk that looks like spilled milk. So why did I choose milk thistle for Judgment? Milk thistle seeds, and I didn't mention this with the emperor, but thistles are almost all healing their roots of the thistle. And, you know, artichokes are thistles. We just eat the flower head before it turns into a flower. So they are digestives. They're good for increasing digestive juices and moving things through the body. There's also other things that they're good at, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that I didn't mention that for the emperor. So for Judgment and milk thistle is specific for poisoning. The seeds of milk thistle, if you grind them up, like if you have been exposed to kind of low levels but long-term poisons, environmental poisons, you can kind of use milk thistle seeds as a supplement to help your body usher those out. Again, I am not giving medical or herbal advice. I'm just telling you what I've read and what I know about it and what I've used it for. Milk thistles are not toxic, so you won't run into problems. And they can be added to food on long term. The reason I like it for the Judgment card is because past actions eventually, as in Judgment, will come, to roost. Things that you do in your youth, decisions that you've made, the way you treat people over time, eventually will impact you. And so if you've led a life that's been tough on your liver, the bill is going to become due. And this might not even be your fault. Like, you might have had a career where, unbeknownst to you, you were exposed to toxins. But that is the consequence of, you're going to have to deal with the consequences. And milk thistle helps you deal with those consequences. It helps your body get rid of what it can, keep what it can, and move forward to the next stage as best you can. So that's why I chose milk thistle. Also, the angel just looks like a giant thistle flower. So that's why I chose milk thistle for Judgment. Okay, we're at the last one, which is an interesting depiction of the world. And this might be surprising. I really like this depiction, though. If you look close, you can see there's the angel, there is the eagle. I think that's flipped, though. Isn't usually the angel over here? Anyway, there's the lion, and she has her hand on the lion. And then look at that. Look at that cow or bull or whatever. So cute. So for the world, I chose calendula. Some people might refer to it as pot marigold. And what's interesting about calendula is it used to be considered like a food. I know in England they used to put it in soups and stuff, but we definitely don't do that anymore. Although you could. So here's calendula. I like calendula for the world because, like the sun, there's a sense of attainment and completion and celebration. I like the circular nature of the calendula flowers more for the world. Also, calendula is a deceptive plant. And what I mean by that is it looks just like a wildflower. And it looks, or it's just something you would find in your grandmother's garden. And yet, it is incredibly powerful. And I think sometimes we underestimate the power of simple things. And calendula is a really great example of that. So calendula, when you make it into a tincture, it has very strong anti-infective properties. So with wounds, I have seen it help a wound make the turn. Wounds, when they're pretty bad or they get infected, there's like touch and go where you try different things. And sometimes it's like, okay, this is not helping. I have seen calendula turn wounds that didn't respond to much stronger herbs, like Echinacea and even plantain. So in certain situations, calendula is what you need. It is gentle and it is powerful at the same time. And I think when you get to the world card, after you've gone through all of the other cards, you realize the strength in being gentle and kind. And you realize your own power. And so calendula kind of represents that for me. You see calendula in the garden, it looks pretty. It's a pretty daisy, yellow daisy. It's got, the inside is kind of brownish yellow. The outside is a golden or orange. It's nice, but it's deceptively powerful. It's edible, like I said, but it makes amazingly strong, healing tinctures. And if you take the buds in your hands, the ones that make the best medicine are the buds that have opened but not fully, and they have this resin, and it smells really good. And you can really feel the power of the plant in the resin of that. They're dumb easy to grow, which is interesting because I've grown things from seed that are notoriously difficult to grow. But when I tried to grow dandelion and calendula from seed, I failed, which is like, what? You can just throw them onto a sidewalk and they'll grow in the cracks. But I think that sometimes certain plants need adversity or need a certain situation in order to grow, and actually dandelion and calendula are like that. So is California poppies. They grow best when they're kind of like dry and neglected, which I find funny. So anyway, yeah, so calendula, pot marigold is my choice for the world card. A sense of completion and power, but also understanding the gentleness and connection between ourselves and the natural world. Okay, well, I enjoyed doing this tag. I want to thank Thea and Candy for creating it, and I hope that you will come back again. Okay, bye.